A very good morning. Welcome to our press conference on faith-based voices in support of values-based multilateralism to uphold the climate justice. It is indeed quite a rich and complex topic, but today our speakers will unpack it for us. So my name is Aneta Wuj, and I am with the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, and we are a member of Interfaith Liaison Committee who organized this press conference. Greetings of peace. We are meeting at the time of a very profound, urgent challenges in multilateral action on planetary crisis, which is marked by very deep divisions and injustice. This press conference brings together voices from different faith traditions, but united by a shared moral and ethical compass that is guiding us towards value-based multilateral efforts for climate action and climate justice. Today we are seeing how vested interests and rising nationalism are slowing down global efforts to tackle climate change, whether it's reducing the greenhouse gas emissions, or addressing in a healthy way the root causes, or protecting the most vulnerable ones and our Mother Earth. Climate change recognizes no borders. Its impact reminds us that we are sharing one planet, one atmosphere, and one future. And we are one human family in one boat. So either we will together thrive, or we will sink together. So faith communities naturally cross borders. At their core, there is a commitment to care for those who are most affected, no matter who they are, where they are, and also call for climate action that is urgent, that is rights-based, that is equitable and transformative. So now we will ask our speakers to share their perspectives from their faith and their organization, what values can do in terms of multilateral actions, how this kind of multilateralism can advise and advance and uphold climate justice. So we are sorry because one of our speakers was not able to make it. Onento Godrey from Caritas Uganda, he sends his regrets. But now I would like to ask Sostina Takure from ACT Alliance from Zimbabwe. Please kindly share perspectives from your faith tradition and your organization on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aneta. So I am a Christian and I'm part of the Pentecostal movement. And I also work for ACT Alliance, which is Action by Churches Together. When we go to the Bible in Genesis 1 verse 28, after God had created the earth and everything that was on it, he put man in it and he said, I give you dominion and you should farm the earth. And you go to Psalms 115 verse 16, David says, the heavens, they belong to the Lord, but the earth, it was given to the children of men. When God gave us the earth, when he gave us dominion, there were no borders, there were no races, there was no political affiliation of any kind, but he gave us dominion as men because he understood that this was our shared home and it was our responsibility to keep this shared home safe and for us to steward it, regardless of where we come from, developed or developing. Race, it was not an issue with God, but it was a God-given mandate for us to steward the earth. So when parties came together under a multilateral process under the UNFCCC, we were going back to that God-given mandate. For us to steward the earth, it was a wake-up call. But unfortunately, the damage had already been done. We had done damage to the climate, and the issue of the climate crisis became an existential threat to us all. As ACT Alliance, when we talk about the climate crisis, we look at it from a justice lens because it is fundamentally an issue of faith, morality, and human dignity. when countries spend $1.2 trillion on their defense budgets, but they cut on climate pledges, it is not morally right. It is not ethically right, because we are investing more in death and less in preserving life. There are three Christian values that I want to speak to that underpin our work in the Christian faith. The first is stewardship of creation, where we are saying, let's go back to our God-given mandate to protect and to restore the environment. The second is on justice and accountability, where we are speaking in line with the UNFCCC's concept of common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Those who have more capacity, those who are historically responsible for emissions, have to invest more in ensuring that we go back to a safe environment. We are saying that there should be provision of means of implementation, capacity building, technology transfer, and financial assistance. And when we talk of provision of financial assistance, this is not coming from a position of begging, but a position of justice. You did damage, and we need to set it right. And we need to discuss it within the faith sector and also within the UNFCCC, because the provisions are there. The third one is love of neighbor, solidarity with communities that are facing climate impacts today. And there is the general agreement that those who are mostly affected by climate change are those who did not and continue not to contribute significantly to the crisis that we are in today. And we speak of the loss and damage, the fund for responding to loss and damage, a fund that is close to the heart of the most vulnerable communities, the adaptation fund. Those funds are crucial to preserve lives and livelihoods. And in the Christian faith, as we are talking of love of neighbor, we are saying the loss and damage fund has to be replenishable, it has to be sustainable, and we need grant-based financing so that we can save lives. The Christian faith teaches us that we must stand with the most vulnerable. And these are the ones affected by droughts, floods, loss of lives and livelihoods. And when we speak of justice, we are saying we must address this inequity and ensure that no community is left behind. So as we are in the negotiating rooms, let's ensure that our discussions do not just end at national access to financing, but ensure that communities, the last man in our communities who is vulnerable, also has access to this crucial financing for lives and livelihoods to be saved. ACT Alliance, we work globally on climate advocacy, from global level to community level. We are here at SBs. We will be there at COPs, raising our Christian voice. And we are also there in communities, standing with the last man on the ground. We also support locally led adaptation initiatives and ensuring that our advocacy is also translated to practical actions, assisting communities in a small way to be able to adapt. What we also do is to stand with communities in the spirit of love of neighbor. We deploy millions of dollars annually to respond to humanitarian crisis, to disasters, so that those who are mostly affected also get a reprieve from their suffering. The time for action is now. And we must ensure that our collective response to the climate crisis reflects our shared moral obligation to protect both people and planet. I always say it's about lives and livelihoods, not politics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sustina, for this very inspiring message and very practical examples also. Thank you. Now I would like to invite Lucy from Sogakaka International, Lucy Plummer. Please kindly let us know what is your perspective, the perspective of your faith, your organization, on multilateralism that is based on values. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So Soka Gakkai International is a global grassroots Buddhist organization. So I'll be speaking from a Buddhist perspective. So climate change is not exclusively an environmental concern, but a profound threat to human security, which focuses on protecting the lives, livelihoods, and dignity of human beings. Climate-induced natural disasters can cause sudden deprivation, instantly undermining the foundations of societies, particularly for the most vulnerable populations, including women, children, the elderly, and persons with disabilities. As momentum towards COP31 builds, we must heed the plight of Pacific Island nations where rising sea levels threaten to cause permanent displacement. For these communities, and indeed other communities in the most climate-vulnerable regions, the loss of land is equivalent to a loss of identity, threatening their ontological security, including their sense of order, continuity, and belonging. Yet, in recognizing their vulnerabilities, we must also take inspiration from their values and have the wisdom to advance under their leadership. Climate change is a threat multiplier in that it aggravates armed conflict, poverty, and hunger, thereby necessitating a coordinated international response. Yet, when multilateral efforts are needed more than ever, the burgeoning of unilateralism, particularly by superpowers, threatens to erode the very basis of the UN system. When countries pursue their own security without regard for others, they create global insecurity that threatens everyone. We must not allow this to become the state of global diplomacy. Multilateralism requires self-control and self-restraint on the part of powerful nations to ensure they operate within the framework of international law, rather than relying on the rule of force. Buddhist teachings contain values that can guide multilateral efforts for climate action and climate justice. The first value I'd like to talk about is respect for the dignity of life. From the perspective of Buddhism, the problem of climate change is human in origin and is a result of what Buddhism calls the three poisons of greed, anger, and foolishness. The three poisons are an innate part of human beings and the root cause of all suffering. Respect for the dignity of life is an antidote for the three poisons by recognizing that all human beings have limitless potential and the capacity to create positive value. By focusing on inner transformation, the three poisons are transformed into the medicine of wisdom, courage, and compassion, qualities representing the positive aspect of human beings, which Buddhism calls the Buddha nature. Just like the three poisons, the qualities of wisdom, courage, and compassion are also innate to human beings. In the SGI, this inner transformation is called the human revolution and involves a shift from an egocentric way of life to a contributive way of life, where one's own happiness is seen as inextricably linked to the well-being of others and the planet. This links to the Buddhist concept of dependent origination, which emphasizes that all life is interlinked. From the perspective of the interconnectedness of all life, we cannot seek our own happiness at the expense of others or future generations, nor can we ignore sufferings occurring in distant places. Based on the understanding that climate change is human in origin, technical fixes are insufficient without, firstly, the human revolution. This revolution in the consciousness of individuals and societies. If we want to transform our world, we must first transform ourselves. Leading on the topic of transformation, I wanted to briefly touch on the concept of humanitarian competition, advocated for by founding Soke Gakkai President Sunizaburo Makuguchi, who observed the nature of competition between countries as military, political, and economic competition. And he theorized that competition could be recast as a non-violent mode of mutual striving for excellence. For Makuguchi, the shift away from military, political, and economic competition towards humanitarian competition involves countries striving together to make the greatest contribution to human happiness and well-being, representing a qualitative shift from a winner-takes-all style of competition to a win-win mode. In this paradigm, nations protect and improve not only their own lives, but also the lives of others, based on the understanding that by benefiting others, we benefit ourselves. This must be the spirit of multilateral efforts for climate action and climate justice. And I would like to conclude with compassion, the fundamental basis of Buddhism. Buddhism developed out of a response to human suffering. When the historical Buddha, Prince Siddhartha Gautama, left his royal palace and encountered for the first time the sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death, his life was profoundly impacted, so much so he gave up his royal life for the path of spirituality, motivated by his agonizing search for the answer to the question of why people suffer. He was motivated by a deep sense of compassion for the suffering of others, despite it not being his own suffering. It was through the path of compassion that Prince Siddhartha became enlightened to the vast potential inherent in all human beings, and with this awakening he was able to bring peace of mind to himself and began teaching his enlightenment to others so that they too could overcome their suffering. So it's only by confronting and facing the social realities of climate change that we can develop compassion, and it is compassion that gives rise to the resolve to find the best way forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Thank you for outlining the spiritual illness of current times and also giving the medicine. Thank you. And finally, I would like to ask Lindsay Fielder-Cook from Quaker United Nations Office to share your perspective and perspective from your organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita, and thank you all for being here. At the Quaker United Nations Office, we were actually established in 1948 to support peace and justice efforts at the newly emerging United Nations. And a year before that, the Quakers received the Nobel Peace Prize. It was a world in trauma, in need of profound healing. We approach climate change as a peace and justice concern, and we advocate for human rights-based approaches to climate action at the Human Rights Council. We support climate scientists and climate science at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC. And here in these rooms, we actually have supported for 14 years something called quiet diplomacy, where we bring quite high-level negotiators from a very diverse group of countries around the table to speak off the record to build communication and understanding. Over 65 countries have participated. In this press conference, we are asked to speak on our shared ethical and moral compass to guide value-based multilateral efforts for climate action and climate justice. The phrase value-based multilateralism is important. Thant Myint U, grandson to the UN Secretary General U Thant, recently wrote, quote, "What's important is not multilateralism, which is value-free and can serve any agenda. What is important are the ideas served by a global cooperation. Ideas and values are grounded in the UN Charter, peace, human rights. What should be integral to these rooms as well, climate justice. We speak to you at a time of intensified planetary crises, increased military spending, war, and inexplicable silencing over crimes against humanity. A time of aggressive attacks on international law, a time when people, young and old, are being arrested for peacefully protesting climate inaction and genocide. And in that way, it is a time of grief and great confusion for many people. As we learn from the Bible, quote, where there is no vision, the people perish, but he that keepeth the law, happy is he, Proverbs 29:18. So what is our vision for hope? In these rooms full of countries, there are people nourished by a range of faiths, faiths which are shared values and need naming. Fairness, compassion, justice, equity, protection of the most vulnerable, and protection of creation. For Christians, these values are crystallized in the Sermon of the Mount, yet these values are across all faiths. They are in Islam, Judaism, Hinduism, Buddhism, across a range of more faiths, if we uphold and if we cherish them. But unfortunately, what is too often prioritized in these rooms is money and power. The language of climate finance too often is framed not about raising money from the most responsible or from those who are responsible, the polluter pays now, but the money is often framed as private sector loans and investment opportunities for economic gain. and promoting the free market economy as if there were no alternative. We are in the second week of the SBs, when too often we hear negotiators conclude that they struggle to find consensus. What if decisions in these negotiation rooms were truly grounded in compassion for the most vulnerable, for nature, and for our shared humanity? The shared ethical values that uphold the sacred, and I do not use that word lightly. To conclude, the vast majority of people in these rooms, negotiators, scientists, UN, and civil society, relate to a faith. As voices of faith, we need to witness the choice that one can speak from the sacred and uphold the shared moral and ethical compass, where meaningful consensus can be more easily found. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lindsay. So, yes, we have heard all different perspectives, and we have heard shared conviction that actually the climate justice is more than an environmental challenge. It is really a spiritual, inner challenge. So it's about not so much what kind of decisions to be taken, but how we can strengthen the trust, the common will, and really the moral courage to turn the commitments into action. So we have started late due to the previous press conference, but I hope we have time for one or two questions. Maybe one question. Is there any question? Then please raise your hand and identify yourself. And please be brief. Thank you so much.
Hello, thank you very much. My name is Daniela, and I want to thank you for all your remarks. And we're in a difficult time. So I wanted to ask you both if you could share some positive examples that you have of how faith-based organizations are supporting value-based multilateralism. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very beautiful question to end with. Please, Lindsay.
I want to uphold Pope Leo. I want to uphold someone who has represented a huge population, who has walked into Spain and upheld the rights of migrants, upheld compassion, and stood strong against hatred and division. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I think we need to finish now, but we can continue outside of the room. But I would like us to finish with one message that emerged from Interfaith Talanoa dialogue on climate justice that took place last week here in Bonn. And this dialogue finished with a beautiful and powerful vision of the future that is not defined by fear, but by possibility of a healthy, sustainable, and just world. So let us take just a moment and imagine such a future, because if we can imagine, it means we can also create it. We have power to create it. Thank you very much.